The silent music arrival, the Kryn Empire had ruled the galaxy with an iron fist for 2 centuries. Their warships, massive constructs of dark metal and pulsing energy cores, had conquered 73 star systems without mercy. No species had been able to stand against them. The Kryn were relentless, their technology superior, their military discipline unmatched. They did not negotiate, they did not show compassion, they simply took what they wanted and destroyed anything that stood in their way. Admiral Thern of the Coalition Defense Force knew his fleet was about to die. He stood on the command deck of the Valiant Star, watching through the viewport as Kryn destroyers tore through his defensive line like knives through paper. The Battle of Ashta system had been raging for 6 days, and the Coalition was losing badly. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Their crews vaporized in an instant. Debris fields stretched for thousands of kilometers, the remains of vessels that had fought bravely and died quickly. The Coalition was an alliance of 12 younger species who had banded together in desperation. Separately they were weak. Together they had hoped to survive, but hope was a fragile thing when facing the Kryn war machine. The fleet had started with 400 ships, now fewer than 90 remained, and those were damaged and running low on ammunition. Behind the defensive line, 300 civilian transports fled toward the outer system, carrying 15 million refugees, families, children, elderly citizens who had already lost their homes once before. If the defense collapsed, those transports would be slaughtered. The Kryn did not take prisoners, they did not allow survivors. They erased entire populations to prevent future resistance. There was a veteran of 40 years of service. He had fought in dozens of battles and survived conflicts that had killed better commanders. His gray scales were scarred from old wounds, and his eyes held the weight of every soldier he had lost. He had accepted death long ago, but he had hoped to buy more time for the refugees. A few more hours, a few more minutes. Anything to give them a chance to escape. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Cass, approached with her head lowered. In defeat, the young Vexian's antenna drooped with exhaustion and despair. Admiral, the Kryn flagship has broken through Sector 7. Our forces there have been completely destroyed. They are moving to intercept the refugee convoy. Estimate contact in 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Thern closed his eyes briefly. 20 minutes until 15 million innocent lives were extinguished. He had failed them. The entire coalition had failed them. Prepare all remaining ships for a final assault on the flagship. Our only chance is to damage it enough to slow their advance. It was a suicide mission, and everyone on the bridge knew it, but it was all they had left. Lieutenant Cass opened her mouth to acknowledge the order when every sensor on the ship suddenly screamed in alarm. Warning. Klaxons blared. Display screens flickered with data that made no sense. Every officer on the bridge turned to their stations in confusion. Sir, we have a massive energy signature emerging in Sector 12. Cass's voice rose with alarm. Right at the edge of the battlefield. Unknown configuration. The power readings are off the scale. Thern turned to the main viewport. Space itself seemed to ripple and tear open, like fabric being cut by invisible scissors. A swirling vortex of blue and white energy expanded rapidly, crackling with power that made the hair on Thern's neck stand up even from this distance. And then emerging from that impossible tier in reality came a ship. It was enormous, easily 6 km in length, dwarfing even the Kryn flagship. Its hull was a dark gray metal that seemed to absorb light, marked with white symbols that glowed softly. The design was unlike anything Thien had ever seen. Sleek and powerful with smooth curves that suggested both grace and devastating capability. Arrays of what could only be weapons lined its flanks, and a massive forward section house technology that defied identification. The bridge fell absolutely silent across the battlefield. The fighting slowed and then stopped entirely as both sides detected the newcomer. Kersey halted their advance. Coalition vessels drifted in stunned confusion. For the first time in 6 days the guns fell quiet. What is that? Thern whispered. Lieutenant Kess worked frantically at her console, her fingers trembling. I do not know, sir. It does not match any vessel in our databases. The energy signature is completely foreign. The design is unknown. She paused, her eyes widening. Admiral, that ship is generating more power than our entire fleet and the fleet combined. That is impossible. The stared at the massive vessel as it hung motionless in space, a dark giant that radiated quiet menace. On the far side of the battlefield, he knew the Kryn were equally confused. The Kryn did not know fear, but they understood threat assessment, and this unknown ship was the most significant threat any of them had ever encountered. A communication channel opened across all frequencies. The voice that spoke was clear and steady, belonging to a female who spoke in perfect coalition standard with an accent that could not place. This is Captain Sarah Mitchell of the Earth Vessel Eternal Horizon. All vessels will cease hostilities immediately. All vessels will power down weapon systems. All vessels will maintain current positions and await further instructions. The words were spoken calmly, but there was steel beneath them. This was not a request. This was a command delivered by someone who expected absolute obedience. Thern found his voice. This is Admiral Thern of the Coalition Defense Force. We are currently engaged in defensive operations against Krynag aggression. Civilian lives are at stake. Who are you? What is Earth? Captain Mitchell's response came quickly. We are humanity. Admiral, we are from a world called Earth, in a system you have designated as Sol 427 in your star charts. We have been watching this conflict for some time. We have decided that it ends today. Watching the implications made Thuron's mind race. A species capable of building a ship like this had been observing the galaxy without anyone knowing they existed. How long had they been watching? How had they remained hidden? Before he could ask, a harsh voice cut across the communication channel. This is Supreme Commander Vorik of the Crane Imperial Fleet. Unknown vessel, you have entered a designated combat zone without authorization. You will withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Your ship is impressive, but you are one vessel against 200. Do not interfere in matters that do not concern you. That had met Vorik once during failed peace negotiations years ago. The Kryn commander was ruthless and arrogant, a warrior who had never lost a battle. He considered himself invincible, and history had done nothing to prove him wrong. Captain Mitchell's response was ice cold. Supreme Commander, you have exactly 1 minute to power down your weapons and withdraw your forces. If you do not comply, I will demonstrate why you should be Concerned, Vorik's laughter echoed. Across the channel, arrogant creature. You dare threaten the Kryn Empire with a single ship? Very well, let me show you. What happens to those who defy us? The Kryn flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Iron Fang, rotated toward the eternal horizon, its primary weapon, a massive plasma lance capable of cracking a moon in half, began charging with deadly energy. Around it 50 CRN destroyers also took aim at the human vessel on the Valiant Star's bridge. Lieutenant Kess gripped her console. They're going to destroy that ship. We have to do something. The wanted to help, but what could his broken fleet do? They were barely holding together themselves, and yet something told him to wait. Something in Captain Mitchell's voice suggested she was not afraid, not even slightly. The eternal horizon did not move, it simply hung in space. Waiting, Sarah Mitchell's voice came across the channel one final time, calm and measured. Your minute is up, Supreme Commander. I warned you. What happened next would be discussed across the galaxy for generations. The eternal horizon did not fire conventional weapons. There were no missiles, no energy beams, no plasma blasts. Instead, the air around 6 Crestriers seemed to shimmer and distort. Space itself appeared to fold inward, compressing and twisting in ways that violated every law of physics therein understood. The 6 destroyers simply collapsed, their hulls crumpled like paper being crushed in a giant fist. Metal screamed and buckled. In less than 3 seconds, 6 warships, each measuring a kilometer in length, were compressed into spheres no larger than escape pods. No explosions, no debris, just 6 perfect spheres of compacted metal and technology that had once been mighty vessels of war. The battlefield fell into absolute silence. Every ship, Coalition and Kryn alike, stared in horror at what had just occurred. 12,000 Kryn warriors had been killed in 3 seconds without the eternal horizon even appearing to fire a weapon. Captain Mitchell's voice cut through the shocked silence. That was a demonstration using less than 1% of this ship's defensive capabilities. You now have 30 seconds to comply with my instructions, Supreme Commander. Power down your weapons, withdraw your forces, or I will reduce your entire fleet to scrap metal. For the first time in recorded history, a cringe commander hesitated. Supreme Commander Vorik stared at his tactical displays, at the impossible data showing 6 of his destroyers compressed into tiny spheres. His officers looked to him for orders, their faces showing an emotion Kryn rarely experienced. Fear. All ships cease fire, power down weapon systems. Vorik's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. Maintain position. Across the battlefield, CR vessels began powering down. Red targeting lights winked out, weapon ports closed. The most feared military force in the galaxy had just been humbled by a single ship from a species no one had ever heard of. Admiral Therne felt his legs weakened. With relief, the refugees were safe. His people were safe against all odds. Salvation had arrived from the most unexpected source. Captain Mitchell opened a private channel to the Valiant Star. Admiral Therne, please proceed with your evacuation of civilians. My ship will ensure safe passage. Once your people are secure, I would like to discuss the current situation and what humanity can offer the Coalition. The managed to find his voice. Captain Mitchell, you have our deepest gratitude. We owe you 15 million lives I do not know how to repay such a debt. Sarah Mitchell's response carried a hint of warmth. You can start by telling me everything about this war, Admiral. Humanity has been away for a long time. We have much to learn about our galactic neighbors, and it seems the galaxy has much to learn about us as the Eternal Horizon maintained its silent watch over the battlefield. Admiral Therne realized that everything had just changed. Humanity had arrived, and the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted in a single moment. The age of Kryn dominance was ending. A new era was beginning. The turning tide. The Kryn High Command chamber was a place where fear did not exist. Built from black volcanic stone and lit by crimson energy conduits, it had witnessed the planning of countless conquests. Supreme commanders in war masters had stood here for 200 years, plotting the domination of the galaxy. With cold precision, defeat was a word that had no meaning within these walls. Until now, Supreme Commander Vorik stood before the Council of Five, the highest authority in the Kryn Empire. His armor still bore scorch marks from the battle, and his pride carried wounds that would never heal. Behind him, holographic displays showed the compressed remains of 6 destroyers, perfect spheres of crushed metal that had once been symbols of Kryn might. High Counselor Draven, eldest of the 5, leaned forward on his throne. His eyes glowed with barely contained fury. You retreated for the first time in our empire's history. Kryn fleet withdrew from battle without victory. Explain this failure, Vorik. Vorik kept his voice steady despite the shame burning in his chest. The humans possessed technology beyond our understanding. They disabled 6 destroyers in seconds without firing conventional weapons. Our tactical analysis suggests their single vessel could have destroyed our entire fleet. Retreat was the only logical option to preserve our forces. Logical counselor Marth, the youngest of the 5, spoke with venom in her voice. The Kryn do not retreat. We do not show weakness. Do you understand what you have done? Every species we have conquered will hear of this. They will see that we can be challenged. Rebellions will ignite across our territories. Then we crush those rebellions as we always have. Vorik met her gaze without flinching. But first, we must understand the human threat. We need intelligence. We need to know their capabilities, their numbers, their weaknesses. Send me with a fleet to observe them. Let me find a way to defeat this technology. High Counselor Draven was silent for a long moment, his ancient mind calculating possibilities. Very well, take a battle group and shadow the humans. Learn everything you can. But Vorik, understand this clearly. If you fail again, you will not return to this chamber alive. Vorik bowed deeply. I will not fail, High Counselor. The humans will bleed like any other species. We simply need to find where to. Good. 3 days later, and 500 light years away, Captain Sarah Mitchell stood in the observation lounge of the Eternal Horizon, watching a convoy of refugee ships pass safely through the void gates, the massive spatial portals built by an ancient civilization long extinct, were the fastest routes between star systems. Control of the void gates meant control of galactic trade and military movement. The Kryn had held them for decades. Now humanity was ensuring them remained open to all species. Sarah was 42 years old with sharp features and dark hair pulled back in a practical style. Her uniform was simple, bearing only her rank insignia and the emblem of Earth Stellar Command. She had served in the military for 20 years, starting as a junior officer on patrol vessels, and working her way up through skill and determination when Earth's government had decided to reveal humanity's existence to the galaxy. She had been chosen to command the first contact mission. The responsibility weighed heavily on her shoulders. Her second in command, Commander James Chin, approached with a data pad in hand. The tall Asian man had been Sarah's friend for 15 years, and she trusted his judgment completely. Captain, we have confirmation that all refugee vessels have made it through the Void Gate safely. Admiral Thern is requesting another meeting with you. He wants to discuss long-term arrangements. Sarah nodded. Send him my compliments and tell him I will meet him on his flagship in 2 hours. What is the status of the Kryn forces? James' expression darkened. Our long-range sensors detected a Kryn battle group entering the sector 6 hours ago. 20 vessels maintaining position at the edge of our scanning range. They are watching us. Sarah trying to figure out what we are capable of. Let them watch. Sarah turned from the viewport to face her friend. The more they observe, the more they will realize that attacking us is a mistake. How our crew holding up? Morale is high. Everyone understands the importance of this mission, though some of the younger officers are nervous about potential conflict with the Kryn. Sarah smiled slightly. Good, fear keeps you sharp. Overconfidence gets you killed. Make sure all department heads review the engagement protocols. If the Kryn decide to test us again, I want our response to be swift and precise. 2 hours later, Sarah materialized on the bridge of the Valiant Star using the Eternal Horizons advanced transport technology. The Coalition officer still looked startled every time someone appeared out of thin air, but they were getting used to the miracles that humanity seemed to perform casually. Admiral Thern greeted her with the traditional Coalition salute, right hand over heart. Captain Mitchell, welcome. Thank you for meeting with me again. Sarah returned the salute with Earth's version, a simple, respectful nod. Admiral, it is always a pleasure. I understand the refugee evacuation is proceeding smoothly, thanks to your protection. Yes. Thern gestured to a holographic star map that displayed the local sector, but we face a larger problem, Captain. The Kryn control 40% of the void gates in this region. Those gates are essential for trade, for communication, for survival. The Coalition has been cut off from half our territories for years. We cannot rebuild while the Kryn maintain this strangle hold. Sarah studied the map, her tactical mind already calculating possibilities. You are asking humanity to help you retake the void gates. I'm asking if such a thing is even possible. The voice carried the exhaustion of a man who had fought a losing war for too long. The Kryn defend those gates with massive fortress stations. Each one is a strategic stronghold with hundreds of ships. Even with your advanced technology, can you challenge that kind of military concentration? Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering her response carefully. Admiral, I need to be honest with you about humanity's position. We have the technology to win battles. We have the firepower to challenge the Kryn military, but we are one ship. We cannot be everywhere at once. We cannot fight a war across the entire galaxy. The face fell with disappointment, but Sarah continued. What we can do is change the balance of Power we can give the coalition the breathing room it needs to rebuild. We can demonstrate to the Kryn that their expansion has limits and we can protect the most critical targets until your own forces recover strength. She pointed to a void gate marked in red on the holographic display. This gate, the one you call the Asheron Gate, is it as strategically important as your reports suggest? The nodded eagerly. It is the key to 3 major trade routes and provides access to 15 coalition systems. If we could secure that single gate, we could reconnect with millions of our people who have been isolated for years. Then that is where we make our stand. Sarah's eyes were hard with determination. We will defend the Asheron Gate, and when the Kryn come to take it back, we will show them what it costs to fight humanity. The Battle of the Asheron Gate began exactly as Sarah had predicted. The Kryn were not subtle in their tactics. They believed in overwhelming force and direct confrontation. When their fleet arrived 6 days later, it numbered over 300 vessels, including 2 Fortress-class dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything the coalition had ever built. Sarah stood on the bridge of the eternal horizon, watching the Kryn armada position itself for attack. Around her, the bridge crew worked with calm efficiency. Humanity had trained for this moment for decades, preparing for the day when they would step onto the galactic stage. Every officer knew their role. Every system had been tested 1,000 times. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, the young tactical officer, studied his displays with focused intensity. Captain, the Kryn are deploying in a standard assault formation, both dreadnoughts at the center, destroyer screens on the flanks, frigate groups positioned for rapid response. They are not changing their tactics, despite what happened at Ashta, because they think numbers will overwhelm us. Sarah's voice was calm. They see one human ship against 300 Kryn vessels and believe the math is in their favor. Commander Chin, open a channel to the Kryn flagship. Channel open, Captain. Sarah addressed the Kryn fleet with authority that filled the bridge. This is Captain Sarah Mitchell of the Earth Vessel Eternal Horizon. You are approaching a protected zone. The Asheron Gate is now under coalition and human protection. Turn back now and there will be no conflict. The response came from Supreme Commander Vorik himself. His face appeared on the main view screen, scarred and furious. Captain Mitchell, you have made a grave error. You humiliated the Kryn Empire. Once, we will not allow it to happen again. Your ship is impressive, but you cannot defeat 300 vessels. Surrender now, and we will grant you a swift death. Sarah met his gaze without flinching. Supreme Commander, you are about to learn an important lesson about humanity. We do not surrender, we do not run, and we definitely do not lose. She turned to Lieutenant Webb. Tactical engage defensive protocols. Show them what one human ship can do. What happened next would be analyzed by military strategists for generations. The Eternal Horizon did not charge forward to meet the enemy. It did not fire overwhelming volleys of weapons. Instead, it simply activated its defensive systems and waited for the Kryn to make their move. Vorik gave the order to attack. 300 Kryn warships surged forward, their weapons blazing with deadly energy. Plasma lances, particle beams, fusion missiles. Every weapon the Kryn possessed focused on the single human vessel. The firepower unleashed in those first seconds could have sterilized a planet. None of it touched the eternal horizon. Shimmering barrier of energy surrounded the ship, invisible until the Kryn weapon struck it. Every plasma bolt, every missile, every beam of energy hit the barrier and simply vanished, absorbed and dispersed harmlessly. The human ship sat motionless in the storm of fire, completely untouched. On the bridge, Sarah watched the tactical display with satisfaction. Shield status: Lieutenant Webb, operating at 12%. Capacity: Captain, we could sustain this bombardment for approximately 6 hours before needing to rotate shield generators. Let them waste their ammunition. Sarah turned to her communications officer. Send a message to Admiral Thern. Tell him to position coalition forces behind our defensive perimeter. They will be safe there while we handle the Kryn assault. The Kryn fleet continued its attack for 20 minutes, pouring devastating firepower into the shields. With no effect, Supreme Commander Vorik watched his tactical displays with growing frustration and disbelief. His officers reported ammunition depletion, overheating weapons, exhausted crews, and still the human ship sat there, unharmed. Cease fire. Vorik's command was bitter. All ships ceased fire and regroup. The Kryn fleet pulled back and sudden silence fell over the battlefield. Sarah waited for exactly 30 seconds before opening the communication channel again. Supreme Commander, you have now witnessed our defensive capabilities. Would you like to see what our offensive systems can do, or would you prefer to withdraw while you still have a fleet? Vorik's face twisted with rage. You cannot hide behind shields forever, human. Eventually you will have to attack, and when you do, my fleet will tear you apart. Sarah smiled, and there was no warmth in it. Actually, Supreme Commander, I do not have to attack. I just have to stand here and protect this gate. You are the one who needs to get past me. You are the one who is failing your mission. How long before the Kryn High Command loses patience with your continued defeats? The word struck home. Vorik's expression shifted from rage to cold calculation. He was a warrior, but he was not stupid. Humanity had superior technology. His fleet was making no progress, and every moment he remained here, his reputation crumbled further. This is not over, Mitchell. The Kryn Empire will find a way to defeat you. We always do, perhaps. Sarah's voice softened slightly. Or perhaps you will realize that there is another option. The galaxy is large enough for all species to coexist. Humanity does not seek conquest. We seek peace. There is no shame in choosing peace over endless war. The CRN do not surrender. I'm not asking for surrender. I'm offering you a choice. Continue throwing your ships against our defenses and achieve nothing, or withdraw. Report to your superiors and let wiser minds decide the future of Kryn-human relations. The silence stretched for a long moment. Finally Vorik spoke. Through gritted teeth, all ships withdraw to the outer system. Maintain observation positions. The Kryn fleet began to pull back, and on the Valiant Star, Admiral Thern watched in amazement as 300 enemy vessels retreated without firing another shot. Lieutenant Kess turned to him with wonder in her eyes. They are leaving, Admiral. Humans did it. They won without destroying a single ship. Thern nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his old eyes. That was the point, Lieutenant. Captain Mitchell did not want to slaughter the Kryn fleet. She wanted to show them that violence is pointless against humanity. She is not just Protecting a gate, she is teaching the Kryn that there is no military solution to the human problem on the eternal horizon. Sarah turned to Commander Chin. James, sent a message to Earth Command. Tell them the mission is proceeding as planned. The Kryn are beginning to understand change is coming. Over the following weeks, something unprecedented began to happen across the galaxy. News of humanity's intervention spread to every system, every species, every government. The story of a single human ship holding off the entire Kryn fleet without firing a shot became legend. Other species began to find courage they had lost long ago. Coalition forces, protected by the eternal horizons, presence began to reclaim lost territories. Minor rebellions erupted. Kryn occupied systems knowing that humanity might intervene if the Kryn response became too brutal. Diplomatic channels that had been closed for decades suddenly opened as species sought to contact these mysterious humans. Sarah Mitchell became the most famous individual in the galaxy, though she found the attention uncomfortable. She was simply a soldier doing her duty, but she understood that she had become a symbol of something larger. Hope, the possibility that even the mightiest empire could be challenged, the idea that peace might be achieved through strength used wisely. 6 months after the Battle of Asheron Gate, Sarah stood in a conference chamber aboard a neutral station facing representatives from 23 different species. Admiral Verne was there representing the coalition. To everyone's surprise, a Kryn diplomat was also present, though he sat alone and spoke to no one. Sarah addressed the gathering with quiet authority. Humanity comes to you not as conquerors, but as partners. We have technology and strength, but we have been alone for too long. We want to join the galactic community. We want to help build a future where conflicts are resolved through negotiation, not warfare, where species cooperate rather than compete, where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them. She looked directly at the Kryn diplomat. We know that change is difficult. We know that old hatreds do not disappear overnight. But we also know that every species in this galaxy is capable of choosing a better path. Humanity extends our hand in friendship to all who will take it, even former enemies. The Kryn diplomat stood slowly, his next words shocked everyone in the room. The Kryn Empire acknowledges the strength of humanity. We acknowledge that our previous methods have led only to endless conflict. High Command has authorized me to begin preliminary discussions regarding a cessation of hostilities with the coalition and establishing formal relations with Earth. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Admiral Verne looked like he might faint. Peace with the Crane had seemed impossible 6 months ago. Now it was becoming reality. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. That, gentlemen and ladies, is an excellent first step. Let us begin the hard work of building something better. As the conference continued into the night, the eternal horizon maintained its watch over the Asheron Gate. Single ship had changed everything. Humanity had shown the galaxy different way forward. The age of endless war was ending. A new age of cooperation was beginning, and Captain Sarah Mitchell, the woman who had dared to stand between warring empires and demand peace, would be remembered as the one who made it possible. The galaxy had held its breath when humanity arrived. Now it exhaled with hope for the first time in centuries.